don't need all this space anymore, Dad. You know that. This apartment is a better fit for us. It's young, modern. It has a future." When Charles said that, the whole dinner table erupted in laughter. I laughed along. But inside, I saw it clearly. They had a plan. My name is Walter Bennett. I'm 72. A veteran. I served 2 tours in the Middle East, survived IEDs and firefights. But I've never seen a battlefield as dangerous as my own birthday dinner table. The day Amanda threw that party, it looked like a warm family gathering. Candlelight, soft jazz red wine, and the roasted chicken breast I love. But in the middle of that seemingly intimate scene was an ambush. I should be clear, I live alone in a 2-bedroom apartment in the suburbs, the same place my wife and I lived for over 30 years before she passed. It's not fancy, but it's my home. I change my own light bulbs, fix my own leaky pipes, and grow mint on my balcony like an old vet who still values his independence. It was my 72nd birthday. Amanda and Charles arrived 10 minutes late, dressed like they were about to meet a high-end client, suit tie, a velvet dress, and a gift box wrapped in gold paper. I opened it. A t-shirt with the words, "World's Best Grandpa." I looked at it, then at her. "You're going to be a grandpa, Dad?" Amanda said, her hand resting gently on her stomach. Before I could react, Charles stood up, raised his wine glass, and announced, "We'll be moving into Dad's apartment in 3 weeks. It will be the first home for our new family." "Thank you, Dad." I looked around. No one had asked me a single question. No one was waiting for my reaction. Because in their eyes, I had already agreed. All because I had nodded that mechanical, unconscious nod you give when you're too stunned to say no. That night I went home and opened the door with my left hand. The hand that once squeezed a trigger in the dead of night. And now it was trembling for a completely different reason, being pushed out of my own home. By my own family. I didn't get angry. I didn't scream. I just sat down in my armchair, turned on the table lamp, and started thinking like a soldier in an ambush. Why didn't anyone warn me? And then I understood, because the ones ambushing you are your own blood. I'll stop here for chapter 1. If you've ever nodded in a moment of confusion, and then realized that very nod was used to take everything from you, leave a comment. Not because I need the sympathy, but because you need to know you are not alone. The next day, I was up at 5:13 a.m. Not because old age makes it hard to sleep, but because of the survival instinct of a man who once lived in the desert. When something is wrong, my body always knows first. I made coffee black, no sugar, no cream, poured it into the old tin mug I brought back from boot camp in '81. Then I stepped out onto the balcony. The breeze was light. The mint I was growing was still wet with dew. But inside me, everything was starting to feel dry and brittle. Amanda posted a TikTok video at 6:02 a.m. Nothing over the top, just a slow motion pan of my apartment, my armchair, the wedding photo of my wife and me, the sunlight streaming through the window. The caption, "Our new family nest. Thank you, Dad, for passing on this space full of memories to the next generation." I sat up straight. I hadn't passed on a damn thing. I didn't call. I took notes. I screenshotted the post. I downloaded it as a PDF. I created a new folder on my laptop named Amanda Charles Transition Plan. I named the files with military precision: Phase 1 social claim.pdf, Phase 2 email direction.pdf. When you've been a soldier, you don't go into battle without building a dossier. I called the only person I could trust, Margaret Blake, the lawyer who helped me with my will after my wife died. "Do you still have that medical power of attorney from a few years back?" she asked. I nodded, even though I was on the phone. I do. From when I was in the hospital with pneumonia. Why, if there's a clause in there that grants temporary authority and you never formally revoked it, Amanda could use that to argue you're incompetent, especially if she has a doctor in her pocket. I was silent for a few seconds. That evening, I opened my file cabinet, pulled out an old blue folder. On the cover, in my own handwriting, St. Paul's Hospital, 2019. I found the power of attorney. My signature was on it. I'd been on oxygen delirious and had signed whatever my daughter handed me just to be left in peace. The paper stated clearly, temporary power of attorney, effective until formally revoked in writing by the principal. I placed it on the desk, stared at it for a full minute. I wasn't angry. I started keeping a journal, by hand. Date, time, actions taken, thoughts I had, words I heard. I didn't need to prove I was right. I just needed to prove I was lucid. Day 1, 06:44 a.m. Black coffee, mint dewy. Reread email from Charles, Amanda's video of the armchair. No reaction. Saved all to a hard drive. Emotional state cold but clear. Not confused. Not losing my mind. If they wanted to turn me into a confused old man, then I would show them a confused man can't document every minute of his day, every beat of his heart, every step he takes the way I was about to. I am Walter Bennett. I have fought to survive. Now I will fight not to be erased from my own life. 3 days later, a light rain was falling. The kind that makes the wood on the balcony creak and old men like me take their arthritis medicine an hour early. 9 a.m. I was writing in my journal when there was a knock at the door, 3 sharp, decisive taps. I knew that knock. Amanda. I opened the door but left the security chain on. Dad, I brought you coffee. Your favorite hazelnut, no sugar. I didn't answer. I just watched her hold the cup with 2 fingers, her other hand carrying a white paper bag. I unlatched the chain. She walked in as if the place was already hers. After a few pleasantries, Amanda placed a small glass bottle on the table. Prenatal vitamins. Daily pregnancy support. Then she gently stroked her belly. It's only been a few weeks, but this feels like the perfect time. I said nothing. Just stared at the coffee cup in my hand as if I were checking it for poison. 15 minutes later, another knock. Charles. He didn't ask. Didn't wait. He let himself in carrying a notepad and a tape measure. No explanation needed. While Amanda chattered on about curtains and paint colors, Charles started measuring every wall. From the outlet to the door frame, 94 inches. The bookshelf 5'10", 14 inches deep. I quietly took out my phone and hit record. You don't measure another person's walls just to live with them. You only do that when you're getting ready to sell. Then Amanda said it. We're thinking of an open concept for the kitchen. People love that bright, airy feel. Makes it easier to sell later. The word sell later hit my ear like a slap from a velvet glove. It wasn't that I was paranoid. It was that they were being careless. When Amanda went to the bathroom and Charles stepped outside to take a call, I walked over to my daughter's handbag. I didn't rummage through it. I just looked at the clear plastic folder sticking out of the top. The first page read, Complete Renovation, Current Apartment Whitman Project. It had a real estate company's logo on it. I flipped through it quickly, floor plans of the apartment. Interior design suggestions, remove the kitchen wall. Install new hardwood floors, replace ceiling fixtures. And on the last page, an estimated post-renovation sale price of 40% increase. I wasn't angry. I just remembered something I used to teach new recruits at the barracks. A soldier never acts friendly for no reason. If he's smiling at you while wearing tactical gloves, you'd better check your 6. When Amanda came out, her hands still damp from washing them, she asked Dad, do you like off-white or a pale yellow? Better I ordered some samples. But your opinion is the most important. I gave a slight nod. This time I nodded with a purpose. After they left, I locked the door and drew the blinds. For the first time in 30 years, I drew the blinds in the middle of the day. I opened my laptop, created a new folder, Stage 1, Renovation Surveillance. I typed out every detail like a field report, time of measurements, dimensions recorded, description of the portfolio, the audio file of Charles's voice saying 94 inches. They came bearing smiles, but I had seen the shackles in their hands. I wasn't going to scream. I wasn't going to fight for my home with my bare hands. I was going to turn the battlefield around with evidence, with lucidity, and with well-timed silence. I was a veteran. But after I left the service, I spent a few years in strategic logistics. My job was to track weapon supply chains, identify leaks, and spot unusual behavior, not with force, but with patterns. And Amanda was repeating a pattern I'd seen before: rehearsed kindness, planned anxiety, and mass-produced gratitude. I met with Margaret Blake, my lawyer, at her small office on the west side of town. I brought photocopies of the old power of attorney pictures of the design portfolio from Amanda's bag and a USB drive with her social media posts. Margaret didn't ask many questions. She just listened, took notes, looked at me like she was interviewing a living witness. Then she asked, "Are you prepared to hire a private investigator?" I leaned back in my chair, not out of shock, but because it was time. I need the truth, Margaret, before they make their next move. 3 days later, I received an email. Subject, "What you need to know." Attached a 7-page report in the same standard format I used to see in the military. Page 1. A photo of Amanda in a coffee shop sitting across from a man with a name tag. Read, Halley Group Real Estate. Page 2. She was handing Reed an envelope, then they were both looking at a 3D model on a laptop. Page 3. A photo of her standing in front of the apartment, my apartment, with a photographer who was taking professional shots of every room. The last page interior photos were submitted for the creation of a 3D model for a sales listing. No official transfer of deed has been filed. But preliminary steps have been initiated. I didn't cry. I wasn't angry. I sat perfectly still, turning each page, analyzing every detail like I was clearing a minefield. That night, I turned on my voice recorder and read the entire report out loud in my own voice. I described every photo, every action, every piece of evidence. Then I saved it with the file name Stage 2 Manipulation Evidence. MP3. The next morning, Amanda texted me, "Dad, I'm sending over a few more paint samples for you to choose from. I think the pale yellow would go so well with your mint plant." I didn't reply. I opened my web browser, typed in the search bar, "Laws on Coercive Property Transfer by Family, Mana. Elder abuse." I read every line like I was reading a topographical map. Because I knew one thing for sure: to survive on a battlefield, you need to know every rule your enemy is planning to break. I was no longer Dad in Amanda's eyes. I was a fixed asset, a name waiting to be crossed off a deed, a signature to be hunted down. I received a letter in the mail on a clear morning. A clean white envelope. The sender was listed as Legal Office of Charles Whitman. I opened it with my old utility knife, the same one I used to open MREs. Inside, a formal letter that began with, "Dear Mr. Bennett, we care deeply about your well-being." An instruction sheet requesting I undergo a cognitive assessment to be performed by a recommended family physician. A referral form which stated clearly, it is necessary to ensure that current property decisions are not being influenced by age-related cognitive decline. That phrase was in bold. I called Margaret. I have the right to refuse, don't I? Of course. But you have to understand, this isn't an offer. It's a legal gambit. They're building a paper trail to file for guardianship. Even if I'm perfectly lucid? Exactly. The more lucid you are, the more urgently they need to prove otherwise, especially if you refuse to cooperate on their terms. 3 days later, Amanda showed up. No coffee, no vitamins, no fake cheerfulness. Just a well-rehearsed, sad face and an expensive handbag. She sat down gently as if she were about to grant me a great favor. "Dad, we need to talk." I didn't reply, just opened the door wider and sat in the chair opposite her. "We don't want you to be lonely. This apartment is too big. If you lived with us, you'd have someone to cook for you, talk to take care of you." Her voice, her body language, her gaze, it was all perfectly scripted. But I was watching her hands. Her right hand twisted her wedding ring over and over. Her left hand rested protectively on her bag. One hand was lying, the other was hiding documents. I spoke softly. "I'm recording this conversation." Her face froze. I tilted my head, confirming the microphone was active. Then I continued. "I know about the power of attorney. I know about the preliminary contract with the real estate firm. I know about the photos of the apartment, the renovation plans, and the email you sent to have the 3D model made. I also know Charles has already contacted a friendly doctor to set up a psychiatric evaluation." Amanda didn't speak for 3 seconds. Then she let out a slow breath and resumed her act. "Dad, you're misunderstanding. You've been so forgetful lately, haven't you? That's why we're worried." I gave a small, dry laugh. "The mint plant on the balcony. You remember it, don't you?" "Yes." "You've had it for years. I've kept a dated log of every time I've watered it, with photos. I have a handwritten journal for every day, every meal, every phone call. If I'm losing my mind, it's the kind of mind that still knows how to document its own existence." I stood up, pulled the notebook from a drawer, and placed it on the table. My handwriting, a new page every day, my memory, my words. No one helped me. "Would you like to check it?" Amanda didn't touch it. She just stood, grabbed her bag, and turned to leave. Before she walked out the door, she looked back. "You're making this harder than it needs to be. I don't want to force this. But if you don't cooperate..." I cut her off. "Then you'll find a way to make me look uncooperative." "I understand." That night I listened to the recording. Amanda's voice, every word, every gesture, every line rehearsed as if in front of a mirror. I saved the file under the name Stage 3, Fabricating Incompetence, MP3. I was no longer afraid of losing my home. I was afraid of being stripped of the right to live by my own memory. And I swore to myself no one was going to do that without a fight. The first text I got was from Jack, an old buddy from my veterans group who lives up near Portland. "Walter, saw Amanda's post on Facebook. Everything okay? Sounds strange." The second was from my old next-door neighbors. "Your granddaughter says you're refusing to see her. They said you need psychological help. Is that true?" I didn't answer anyone. I just quietly took a screenshot of every message. I went on Facebook. Amanda's profile was filled with new content. One post, "Love isn't always returned, especially when the parent you adore no longer wants to be a parent." Beneath it was a photo of my living room soft lighting the hand-woven rug I bought in 1998. A short story clip. "All we want is to love him. Why does it have to be so hard?" I wasn't angry. Not at all. I felt relieved because I understood they were betting on me to react, to get furious, to write a rebuttal, to scream about the truth. But I didn't have to do that. I just had to save everything and prepare for my final move. I opened a folder named Legacy Proof. Inside was screenshots of all Amanda's posts, every comment from her friends, every share emoji and hashtag. The video clip of me with the sound muted, forcing a smile at my birthday party. I extracted the metadata, saved it all offline, and made handwritten notes like a sentry guarding a supply map. I called Margaret. I could sue for defamation if I wanted to, but I don't need to. So, what's your play, Walter? I'm choosing the third option. She was quiet for a few seconds. Then she let out a soft laugh. I had a feeling you would. 3 days later, I started packing. Not clothes, evidence. 3 weeks of my handwritten journal, every page photographed. Audio recordings of all manipulative conversations, all the photos they took of the interior, Charles's emails, the TikTok clips that framed me in their story of love. I sent everything to Margaret to build a file in case of a lawsuit or an accusation of senility. After that, I called Iris, an old friend who used to be in real estate and now lived a quiet life one state over. I told her I want to sell the apartment, off market. No public listing, no broker. She only asked one question. This is about Amanda, isn't it? I replied. It's not about her anymore. This is my decision. That evening, Amanda posted another status, Dad. If you're reading this, I just want you to know we need love, not a fight. I smiled just a little, because by then I was already off the chessboard. But my final move was still in play. Tuesday, 8:03 a.m. I got the call from Iris. It's done, Walter. The buyer wired the money. They didn't ask to negotiate. They want to keep all the furniture. I didn't speak right away. I just looked around my kitchen where the morning sun filtered through the linen curtains, the kind my wife had picked because they aren't harsh, but they still let the light in. I looked at the wooden cabinet with the small scorch mark from a Christmas candle. The clock that was always 2 minutes slow intentionally, because I once taught Amanda that if you're a little late, people are less likely to rush you. I nodded even though Iris couldn't see me. Thank you, Iris. As quiet as I'd hoped. I didn't cry. I had no regrets. I just wrote a single note and placed it on the old wool blanket my wife had knitted. This house once belonged to a family. Now all that's left is the silence. And it no longer belongs to you. I left the apartment at 4:52 p.m. No moving truck, no goodbyes. I just hired a man from the local church to help me move 3 boxes. My books, my legal files, a few picture frames, and the metal box containing the manuscript of the journal I was writing. I didn't take the TV, the armchair, or the dining table. I only kept the things that couldn't be replaced. Memories, evidence, and my dignity. I moved into a small cabin by a lake. A low-roofed log house with a porch and a large pine tree outside the window. In the late afternoon, when the sun slanted through the branches, it cast a stripe of gold across the wooden floor. The kind of light that reminded me of my wife's embrace when I'd wake from a war nightmare. I changed my phone number, deleted my Facebook, closed my old bank account and opened a new one in a town none of my family had ever been to. I wrote a new will. No Amanda, no Charles. I left my entire remaining estate to an organization I founded myself, the Quiet Exit Fund. A fund to help seniors escape financially abusive relationships. Margaret sent me the notarized copy. In her letter, she wrote only one line. Not everyone knows how to disappear correctly. You do. The following week, Amanda sent an email. Dad, we're worried. You're not answering your phone and no one has seen you. Is something wrong? I didn't reply. It was immediately followed by a text from Charles. We are considering filing a petition to verify the status of abandoned property. If you do not respond within 7 days, we have the right to ask the court to determine its legal status. I forwarded the message to Margaret. Her reply was a single line, logged. No response necessary. They no longer have legal standing. I opened my notebook and wrote a new entry. They thought I was the fish in the pond swimming around waiting to be caught. But I was the one rowing the boat, and I've already left the water. I was sitting in my rocking chair on the porch. The wind carried the scent of pine and the sound of a distant owl hooting in the woods. At exactly 6:47 p.m., there was a knock on the door. 3 short taps, then a pause. Then 3 more harder this time. Then a familiar voice. "Dad." "It's me, Amanda." I didn't move. Didn't make a sound. I just set my mint tea down on the small wooden table beside me. And I listened the same way I used to listen to the wind tear through a mountain pass on a winter night in Kandahar. "Dad, we just want to talk." We drove a long way. I pictured her out there, in a long coat, her face tense, holding a bottle of cheap Pinot Noir, a wine I hadn't touched since my minor stroke in 2015. Without looking through the blinds, I knew Charles was standing behind her, a backpack slung over his shoulder, feigning calm. 10 minutes passed. Amanda started speaking louder, her voice cracking with manufactured emotion. "Are you going to abandon your own grandchild? You don't even want to see your grandchild?" I almost laughed out loud. I knew there was no baby. The ultrasound picture Amanda had posted was a stock photo from a pregnancy app. I had found the original on Pinterest. I listened to her staged sobs like something out of a bad soap opera. I sat still. It was the most powerful response I could give. After 22 minutes, I heard a car engine start its sound fading into the rustle of falling leaves. I stood up and walked to the edge of the porch. They had left a gift, neatly wrapped, tied with a white ribbon. I didn't open it. I took a photo, put the package in a canvas bag, and placed it on a wooden shelf next to my legal files. I sent the photo to Margaret with a note ultrasound was fake. Indirect contact attempt, no response from me. She replied in 5 minutes. Noted. They're building a humanitarian narrative. Don't engage. A week later, Amanda sent a text, "I'm still your daughter. I hope you can forgive me." I read it. Then I turned off the screen. I didn't delete it. I didn't reply. I went to make tea. With mint, I grew myself watered every morning without anyone's help, without anyone pretending to care. I returned to my rocking chair, draped a thin blanket over my lap, and watched the lake shimmer with the last purple light of day. Not a word, not a sob, just the silence. And in that silence, I understood I didn't lose a daughter in a single day. I lost her the moment she started looking at me like an apartment and not a person. About a month after I moved to the cabin, when the sound of falling pine cones had become as familiar as a ticking clock, I received a strange email. From Julie M. Subject: Walter, I think you need to see this. It took me a few seconds to remember Julie had been Amanda's best friend in college. The two of them had graduation photos together, arms linked, calling themselves soul sisters. Then suddenly Julie had vanished from all of Amanda's stories. I never asked, and Amanda never told. The email wasn't long. "You got out at the right time. I just heard through a friend in the industry. Amanda and Charles are under an internal investigation for using images of a property they didn't legally own to create a sales model. Amanda sent the photos, and Charles created a preliminary file on a real estate listing platform. The problem started when the actual buyer's agent requested verification of ownership. The brokerage firm deleted the listing within 24 hours of receiving a legal warning. I heard Charles's professional license has been suspended pending the investigation. Nothing's public yet, but the Bar Association doesn't go easy on people who falsify property records. I just wanted you to know. Your silence was the right move. I wish you peace. Julie. I didn't reply. I didn't forward it, I didn't share it. I just closed my laptop, poured another cup of tea, went out to the porch, cut a slice of a freshly baked cinnamon loaf, and sat down in my chair looking out over the gray-blue water. There was no cheering, no resounding victory. But I knew one thing for sure. The price of greed always comes due. It just doesn't always come with a receipt. I opened my journal. A fresh page. I wrote one line right in the middle. No one can take everything without paying a price. And not all prices appear on an invoice. I didn't tell my friends this story. I didn't post an expose. I felt no satisfaction. Because for me, victory was not having to be present at all. I just sat here breathing in the crisp, dry air, listening to the wood creak softly beneath my chair, and knew I was still whole. I woke up at 6:11 a.m. A light fog hung over the lake, its surface as still as a mirror. No one called. No one texted. No one needed me to sign anything. I poured a glass of water, added a few mint leaves from the wooden pot, and sat down to write. Not because I needed a record, but because I still wanted to remember that I was alive and living on my own terms. I've never told anyone this, but I wrote a final entry in my journal meant only for me, not for sharing. Today, I'll read it again and copy it here as a farewell to anyone who might be reading. Don't try to make them understand. They don't want to understand. They want to use. If you are old and you know you still have your wits about you, that is the power they fear most. And when they start calling you a burden in need of help, or someone who shouldn't live alone, remember they are talking about an asset, not a person. A month after Julie's email, I still hadn't heard anything more from Amanda. No texts, no letters. And I didn't need to. I didn't need an apology. Because an apology can't buy back trust that's been put up for sale. I didn't need them to understand my side. Because while I was still alive, they had already chosen to rewrite my life from the angle they preferred. Here in this small wooden cabin, I am no longer someone's old man. I am Walter Bennett, a veteran, a survivor, a man who chose to leave not because he gave up, but because he was no longer willing to be controlled. I know some people will read these words and think, he must be so lonely. Perhaps. But it's the smallest price I've ever paid for absolute freedom. I wrote the last lines in my journal next to a small photograph of my wife. We used to live in a place called home. Now I live in a place called myself. I don't expect anyone to remember me. I only hope that if you, the person reading this, have ever been a parent, ever been pushed to the margins, ever been treated like a burden instead of a human being, you know this. You still have time to walk away from the board. You still have the right to be silent. And you still have the right to own your truth without needing to win a public victory. My name is Walter Bennett. I was almost pushed out of my own life. But now I no longer need to walk back in, because I built a different door. And this time, I'm the only one with the key.